Hi, I'm Chris Nedza, Lead Entrepreneur in Residence of the Advanced Technology Development Center at Georgia Tech. We're the state of Georgia's technology incubator. Welcome to Season 1 of the ATDC podcast, Executive Bytes. We focus on the startup founders in our portfolio, what sparked them to launch their companies, the market problem they've solved, and even how they overcame the thoughts of quitting when times get rough. Enjoy. Awesome. Hey, you guys. Welcome back to Executive Bytes. Today, we're going to be interviewing and talking to Dana Weeks of MedTrans Go. And but before I do that, Mike Pink from Smart PM is a signature CEO. They just graduated. They're scaling and growing like crazy. So he's going to be my co-host. So Mike, welcome. Dana, you're on the firing line. We're going to have an awesome time today.
Yep.
Quick smart fact about Dana is that, I don't know if it's a smart fact, but it's a fact, that you went to and graduated from Stanford.
Yeah, that is definitely a fact, and something that I'm both proud of, especially having gone there when innovation and entrepreneurial pursuits was ripe. And so I think it fit my DNA from the start, but also moving on, it's just really has been a great community. And even though I'm now really based in Atlanta, there's a part of me that's still in California.
But she's humble. I had to dig that out of her, I had to explore that.
Hey, you've been on the ground floor at Silicon Valley.
I was on the ground floor. It's actually a fun thing because you can put names and locations and addresses to companies that have really transformed the world. And that's been great.
And that's awesome, but as they would say, it's a great place to be from. You're like now
Yes.
at ATDC down in Atlanta, so we got it going on too, right?
Yeah.
Hey, so give us a quick little elevator pitch. I could do this on MedTrans Go, but because I love your service and I love your technology and what you're doing, but tell us what MedTrans Go is about.
So MedTrans Go is really solving this problem of cancellations in healthcare. It's a $150 billion problem because transportation and interpretation is a cause that's disrupting the healthcare industry. And so we created a marketplace that connects healthcare providers with safe and reliable transportation and interpretation providers to help healthcare providers run their operations more efficiently. And we've talked about this a lot. Mean, in some senses, it really is an Uber for specialized transport or for the on-demand access to everything from wheelchair, stretcher, and sometimes basic life support transportation.
My mom ended up in the hospital. She's elderly. She ended up in the hospital, and I spent New Year's Eve in about a month in the hospital with her. And one of the most frustrating things when it was time for her to go home, we missed about 3 or 4 days because the hospital couldn't quite coordinate with the ambulatory service to get her home because we couldn't drive her. Yeah. And that's exactly one of the things that your service does. Like you can transport, patients home from the hospital, but she's always got doctor's appointments that we've got to go to, and sometimes it's very difficult for me to get to. You guys can actually help them get to their doctor's appointments, and that's the issue that a lot of people in the medical profession have, right? Like getting their patients to the appointment so they don't cancel and everything runs well, and you guys are addressing that. Did I nail that?
Yeah, you really do, and I think it's because there are two levels of purpose for what we're solving for. I mean, the first is what you talked about. It's that, personal nature. I mean, there increasingly are people who are more vulnerable. They're living in rural communities, they're an aging population, or they have potential diseases that you really just can't go in a ride share, or you can't go in a regular car, or you need that extra assistance. And so we're able to solve for that. But the bigger challenge is, like, healthcare has all of these wonderful innovations that they're growing, but on an administrative level, they don't have that, and they're moving fast. They're trying to get through things. They're worried about their bottom lines, and ultimately, something like transportation, which is solvable, can actually help run their practices better and increase revenue and really help with even staff turnover.
I have a question that's coming to mind. It's more about the business model.
Yes.
Because this is, you're putting value in two buckets here. You've got the person who needs the service, and you've got the organization who appreciates the service because of their own business model, having all the productivity issues. How did you guys work through figuring out the pricing model and who to charge? And then there's insurance as well. So I'm interested to know, I'm sure that was difficult. It sounds very simple, but I'm sure it was difficult to navigate. Who do we charge for this service, and when and how? How did you work through that one?
Well, great question. I mean, at the end of the day, what's great is the need is so great that people are willing to pay. Whether
the pain,
it's
that
pain point. We are working right now with those health providers who are actually paying because they see the direct link to either the revenue that they're going to gain or the absolute challenges that that's disrupting their business. We are working with health payers to offer and have that as an option as well. But right now, a lot of our customers are either paying outright because they do the calculations and they see that this makes a lot of sense, or they're passing it through, or just in general, it allows for a negotiated rate to be able to have this access for your patients.
Yeah, because this is a service that I would pay for my mom as well.
Oh, I would have paid for it.
I can't make it. I can't get you an Uber, but if that was a service, so for the customer being the person who's going, I can see that being a way to obviously increase revenue for you.
Yeah.
But then there's also going right to the hospital and saying this is a concierge service that we offer.
Right.
Yeah.
And you depending on the challenge that you have or the health condition that you have, you don't always even have the right equipment, car or resources to help them. And that's really a challenge. And what is great about our technology is it puts all of the information together so that you can, if you're actually, a caregiver or somebody who has someone who's doing the transportation, you have access to where that person is in their transportation. You understand all of their billing and the information, and so it gives insight. And then ultimately, we collect all of the data, and we can do analytics for hospitals, for others, when people are going, where they're going, when what their needs are, and so we can make calculations of talking to some of our transporters who are third-party transporters that we bring onto our platform, and we can say, look, in this area in Valdosta in Georgia, we on Mondays have a greater need for wheelchair and stretcher rides. So if you're going to change your fleet or the way you're responding, this is the day to do it. And so the more information that we have, the more we can help solve for the needs and the patterns that people just didn't have information about.
Okay, so I've got this question. What was there a personal experience that you had that caused you to start this or inspired you to start this?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was really born out of my co-founder's challenge that he had in his practice. He's a board-certified orthopedic surgeon here in Atlanta, and he had back-to-back cancellations in one day. And so much is involved in preparing somebody to be able to have surgery, as well as just making sure that your practice is running efficiently. And so what he found was those back-to-back cancellations were a result of interpretation and transportation challenges.
Interpretation meaning?
Foreign language, like Spanish interpreter, American Sign Language. Ultimately, legally you can't perform a surgery if they can't communicate with you. And so that was canceled because that interpreter didn't show up, and there was really no on-demand solution for him. And so
the interpreter didn't show. I never even thought about that. So it's anything related to that.
Anything related to that. And so
what an insurance
he and I
policy.
both went to Stanford, and we both sort of had that idea where we've seen a lot of people solve for these transformative businesses and challenges, and we could do that. We also, I have a business degree, and so I did the numbers and realized that this is not just a challenge for him. This is not just a challenge in the Southeast. This is a nationwide problem, and it's only growing because of some of the communities that are being impacted.
So I want to know. I want to know about that first meeting when contacted you and said, "I got to talk to you about this problem." And then what ignited you?
Oh, that's good.
And I know you ran the numbers.
Yeah.
So I want to hear a little bit about what excited you. It's an opportunity. You ran some numbers, and then all of a sudden you're in.
Well, I do have sort of healthcare in my background. I worked for Pfizer, but I also have tech. I worked for Singular, then AT&T. A lot of it made sense when it was sort of all laid out.
All right, wait a minute. Are you asking? So did you guys have a bottle of wine and a couple of notepads?
Yeah,
like
or was it
aha?
Yeah.
Is that what happened, or what? Like
either way. Like, what was the first meeting? How did the light bulb go off in your mind? And then what got you fired up?
Well, he was very fired up.
Yeah.
He
had pain.
He had a lot of pain, and it was a financial pain. I mean, healthcare practices are increasingly getting squeezed and challenged, and these surgical cancellations cost a lot of money to his business, and so he was very passionate about it. And so ultimately, too, when we're solving something that he
now I'm going to direct you
experienced,
because we're going to edit this out. We want to get into it's really interesting. So just pause there for a second. Go back to the day that you guys, was there a day that you guys met and were like, you know what, we're sitting around talking in the office and we're whiteboarding it, and it's like, I think this is good. Go away, figure this stuff out from a business standpoint. Like, what was that meeting? That's what we're asking.
I want to know. Like,
that's the exciting
so
stuff. You don't
I
have to...
might be skirting around this, but ultimately, my co-founder is my husband.
Oh, okay.
So it was, maybe there was wine.
My brother.
Yeah, maybe it was wine, but in some senses, I was drawn by his vision, and I think that I had an additional passion about this also because my mom had undergone cancer treatments, and she's in New York. And so flying up there back and forth, fortunately, I was in a position that I could take off work or make that happen.
Right.
But, you just don't have that. And the frequency at which you need to go to some of these appointments is pretty significant. And so, that it's that personal level that we were just talking about, where you're not only finding a solution for the healthcare industry, which is really fractured and really challenged, but you're also really, like, on a personal level, seeing the need of how, I'm not gonna solve cancer right now, but I can solve getting transportation to people. I can solve finding interpretation. And so it's really just a matter of setting up that system and having a lot of the technology do what folks are spending hours unnecessarily doing.
Right. Okay. So it's been a cakewalk. You started, you guys had a good idea as a cakewalk. You started, it's been how many years?
7 years, yeah.
Okay, so it's one of those overnight successes, because I know you guys are doing really well in scaling. But in those 7 years, did you have a time you wanted to quit? And how did you grind through it?
It's funny. Gosh, that's a great question. In some senses, I gotta say, just being an entrepreneur, there's a time every single day that I feel like I want to quit. And what's exciting about being an entrepreneur is that resilience and that rethinking of why I'm doing this, and or like the pieces of how I can change and how I can adapt to things, because I'm presented with things new every single day. They're big wins sometimes, but then they're also big disappointments. Yeah. And that is, sometimes in an hour's process, you're getting all of those like 100 times over. And so I almost feel like, by nature of being in a startup, you have to be challenge to want to quit. Like, why are you doing this? You know, why is this worth it? And so it's for me, I think getting to that point where I'm asking myself, should I quit, is the inspiring piece to get me to want to move on and to continue to work hard.
Wow, I don't know about you, Mike, but I've done a few startups, and every one of them has that near-death experience of, oh gosh, I don't know how to. Why did I get into this?
Yeah.
But it's not. But the problem is that once you get in and you've taken investors' money, there is no exit door.
Yes. Right.
Like, you have to grind it out and stick it out.
Right. Which, for us as well, it's we bootstrapped a lot of it, and so it's we're invested both for our investors, but we're invested personally, and we really believe in what we're doing. We're getting some great wins, as you say, but I think it is a good question. It's obviously not near death, but in some senses you could feel near death all the time.
Yeah, volatility is a challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've learned over the years, because I've been through it too. Still, it doesn't change.
Yep.
But the idea of looking back at where you started and where you're at now, and being able to stop looking forward at that next wall to run through. I was struggling in that, but I would like to hear about what is your growth look like when you look at it from a higher level? Where were you 7 years ago? Where were you 3 years ago? Where are you now?
I love that, and I mean, it's funny. It does, in that near death experience, like you can really gain strength from looking at where you started. Like, I just remember when you're just kind of writing it out, and you're like, we early on we were trying to find the right tech partner to build our platform. Oh my
gosh, that's a whole nother podcast,
right? And so I'm thinking to myself, wow, the challenges that I'm having now, because we're about to launch our version 3.0, or we're starting to get work on that. I'm like, oh, I'm challenged about this, but then I think, oh, wow, 7 years ago, we didn't even have an MVP. Like, we were just, it was just theory. We were kind of still doing a little bit of the old school analog model, where we're like, just making sure we can make the connections. If I'm remembering your question, because I got kind of
3 years ago. So 7 years ago, you were on the napkin.
Yeah, so 7 years ago, we were on the napkin. 5 years ago, we got hit with COVID, and folks, the doors were shuttered, and we were like, wow, are we even going to exist? But what ended up happening is kind of a little bit of the opposite swing. I think people started to really stop and feel the effects of these cancellations, feel the effects of the administrative challenges, feel the effects of burnout, turnover. And so in some senses, the need for health systems and hospitals became greater, and people were more aware and trying to pull all of these pieces together to figure out how we do that. And so, that was 5 years ago. And then, as we're launching and as we're growing, we've kind of found that product market fit, and we're landing some big customers. We just landed a huge health system in the Southeast that we're going to be launching next month.
Do you have any stats that you'd like to share? Like, you've transported 15 people. Like, give me some perspective on.
Oh man, that's a great question, and I have wonderful data dashboards that say that, and I'd say it's not the hundreds. We've transported over 3,000. Folks just in transportation, and served another 2,000 or so in interpretation services. So obviously our volume has increased, we've grown, so to
and
your
the flywheel's
point
starting to happen now,
yes,
right? So,
yeah. And really we have really invested in the building of our technology, so that when we're scaling, we can scale pretty instantly with one or two health systems. So, we grew a lot, with smaller practices, or even multi-state practices with lots of different facilities in the beginning. But that's sort of like, just regular growth. But now that we're landing health systems, that's an instant doubling of our numbers,
Right.
of our transactions. And what we have done is made sure that the technology is able to accommodate that and able to scale. And so, we're proud that we're in this place where we've not only found that product market fit, but we've also found a way to, step into bigger systems. And so then when we're working with payers and we're working with other, customers that can have, in themselves 5,000
Right.
just from them, then we can really test this out and see how this is going to work. Which
how much
been
scale
great.
you can get.
Yeah.
I have another question, because I know this is all relevant to everybody who's been an entrepreneur, but you were sitting down thinking about solving the problem. You had a vision, and then reality.
Yes.
What are some big aha moments that you learned through the process that sort of changed your trajectory for the positive? Like some of those moments in time where
That's a great question.
We realized this at this moment, we did this, and then that was the right track. Do you have it?
Or pivot, or
it could be a pivot. It could be we were selling to the wrong person, or the pricing model was off, or the platform needed to do X, Y, and Z. I'm sure there was a few serious moments that you can go back to and say,
here's an example.
we figured something out at this moment, and it changed our trajectory.
Love your question. And I think for, a lot of what you asked, like pricing and others, we've pivoted, we've understood, and as we're getting that product market fit, we're understanding that. But I think, right now, in looking back, the biggest thing would be an understanding the value of our data and how that is not only helping us, but how we're presenting it to our customers. And we just, especially for larger systems, they have no insight into how and why things are happening. And we can use it with transportation, but we can obviously start to connect it into electronic health records and others. And so I think that it's not necessarily like a pivot, but like the big aha moment was thinking through and getting information, getting data, and understanding how valuable that is. And we have some strong data analytical folks on the team, including myself, who are sort of like data junkies in that way. And so I think being able to use that as our source of strength has been great. And you add on to that the rise of AI right now, and the more information that you have and the ability to kind of apply it and use it in that technology, that to me is like our aha of like, what's our next vision? Like, not only are we solving for real needs of transportation and interpretation, we also are ultimately creating a way to both present better outcomes, not only for patients, but for these healthcare providers that are, desperately needing kind of that information, which they've never had.
Yeah, well, awesome, man. It has been great spending time with you guys. Dana, thank you for being my amazing guest. Mike, you got to do this again, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to make a comment that it popped in my head that I think that at a bigger level with your business, you're solving a supply chain issue, and the supply is the actual patient, and I think that's really interesting. Not understanding that the patients are part of the supply chain for these healthcare providers, and looking at it in a whole new light. So I think it's very impressive.
I really appreciate that. It's been really fun talking to you guys and getting to know you a little bit as well.
Let's do it again. Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the ATDC podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, and share or connect wherever you get your podcasts. Please be sure to follow us on social media. Our handle is @ATDC on X, LinkedIn, and Instagram.